The South African sugar industry is in crisis. The sugar tax came into effect in April last year. The industry claims that the sugar tax is costing the industry about 1 billion rand a year. For more on the story, I'm joined by Tim Sibisi, he's the director of SA Cane Growers. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the sugar tax and the implications there, what was your reaction to that budget overall?
Yeah, the budget is come up with some other surprises for us, because last year when the sugar tax is implemented from April, and then it cost us 1.3 billion rand as an industry in the sugar cane industry. And we're talking about 350,000 job losses that in that short space of time from the season of 2017-2018 season up to now. So now when we didn't hear from the minister mentioning about sugar tax, but on a minister's budget, he have increased by 5.2%. Now we are putting about 10,000 jobs that we're going to lose as an industry. And then it sounds good for the government because they're making money, but as an industry, we are bleeding. We need some intervention from the government, and then to come and look at it seriously, how many people that are going to lose jobs. And then we're talking about millions of people that are supported by the workers that are working on a farming community in rural areas. If we talk about sugar cane industry, we're talking about the industry that is creating more jobs for this country, because we operating in rural areas where there's a lot of challenges when you talk about the economics of this country.
Can you break down to us how exactly that sugar tax that was implemented leads to job losses in the sugarcane industry?
Currently, what we are facing now, there's a lot of things that's impacting our industry, and then mostly the import sugar, illegal and illegally import sugar that are coming into in our country. Last season, we're talking about 2018, we're about 500,000 tons of imported sugar that came to our industry. Our local market demand on sugar is shrinking. As a result, we have got too much tonnages of sugar in our warehouse that we cannot able to sell in our community. When we're trying to sell it, to export it to the other countries, we're putting too much losses, because the rand is not strong, and at the same time, it's not easy. But at last, we managed to march to Parliament last year, and then we marched to ITEC in Pretoria, and then trying to make government to understand the impact, how we are being impacted as farmers, because we couldn't able to cope. There is no playing field in this market of sugar industry. We can't compete with the global market, because we didn't have a sugar tariff. Eventually, ITEC hear us when we marched to Pretoria, and then they increased the sugar tariff. But not the way we were looking at, because we were asking to at least sitting at $856 per ton. But we managed to come up with $566 per ton. And then we tried to bid on that. But now the sugar tax is coming up and increasing another 5.2%. And then we're going to lose a lot of jobs in the sugar industry.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons and the justifications for that sugar tax was that excessive sugar led to diseases or lifestyle challenges like obesity, like diabetes, like heart disease. So how do you balance the jobs that you're saying at risk with also the very devastating effects of having too much sugar on the population?
What is happening in that analysis that was given to government to come up with that sugar is causing diabetic and then obesity is something that one have to look at it, and then because as we speak now we are getting imported stuff which has been processed from other countries coming with containers of which in a tin stuff and rebrand in South Africa, and we don't know the exact amount of sugar that is there, but sugar, obesity and diabetic, all those related diseases, they say is caused by consuming a lot of sugar. The major companies like Coca-Cola, that is our biggest support in our industry, buying from us as far as millers of this country, they have to reduce sugar in their product, and then they also reduce the container where they put the product. That resulted that the demand of our sugar in the industry, and then they opted to get sugar from outside, cheaper sugar, with not the quality of the sugar that we're producing in South Africa. But at the same time, there's a lot of things that cause a person to be obesity, and then be not only sugar, and then even you can get something that you can get from other products, and the way you eat, it also impacts your body, what can take your body. But as doctors, they can tell more about it. It's not about sugar, and then we need to look at that as well. But for the industry, it's good for the government, they're making money on tax, but in a downstream line, we're talking about people in our constitution, we're talking about we need to create jobs for this country, but on the other hand, they're making money, on the other hand, and then we're losing jobs. And then if I can talk to you now, where the status of our industry, and you will find that if it can carry on like this without government intervening in this process to come and rescue our industry, we might be closing about 3 to 4 mills in South Africa, because they cannot cope, because we've got sugar that is coming from Swaziland. We've got the agreement, the government that they've got with the SADC region, that they have to have trade, and then we found that Swazi sugar importing about 400,000 tons in South Africa. And then we cannot cope with that. And then our sugar in South Africa, we cannot sell it. And then there are mills that are investing in SADC region. And then they've got a cheap labor on the other side. And then our own brothers and sisters and gogos who are trying to farm in a small farming community. We're talking about small farmers here who are suffering. And then they've lost everything that they're getting from sugar industry because they cannot cope.
Mm-hmm. So I know you've said that you've marched on Pretoria, and this is quite serious, and you're calling for government intervention. But what other steps have you taken to try and engage with government, not only at a national level, but perhaps at a provincial level, from where you are, to say this is a very serious crisis, we employ X amount of people, and this industry is under threat from actions that the national government has taken? Help us.
It is something that is very difficult for us. It's only government and the political will. We've been to Parliament, and then with the committee we have consulted to DTI, ITEC, and then we invited them that they had to come on board and then understand the industry. Yesterday, we were receiving the DDG from Economic Development to come and learn about what the challenges that we are facing as a farmers, as an industry as a whole. Because alone as an industry, we cannot able to win the fight competing with global without political will. And then that's why now we're asking government to intervene and come closer and learn about what is happening in our industry, because our industry is not yet even transformed, especially in the farmer side. Small-scale farmers are bleeding, and even commercial farmers are bleeding. We cannot get finance from financial institutions, and because the balance is not, it doesn't match, and then we need support from government and come and understand the challenges that the farmers are facing. We're coming from the drought for 2 years, and then we lost 2 billion rand on because of the drought. And then this industry is 14 billion industry, 14 billion rand industry, of which government is benefiting because we're creating more jobs for people of this country. And that's why now they have to protect the import that are coming into our, it's same thing that happened to the textile industry, same thing happened to the poultry industry, is happening to sugar industry. We need government, we're inviting government to understand the challenges and difficulties that our industry is facing.
Mr. Sibisi, one could also say that you need innovative solutions to the problems, and we can't just look to government for solutions. Are you interacting with anyone else to try and find a way to deal with this crisis instead of just looking to government?
Yes, we are. We are working very closely with all the role players. This morning, we were locked in our boardrooms with all associations, which is South African Milling Associations, Cane Growers, South African Cane Growers Association, South African Farmers Development Agency, which is SAFTA, and then we're trying to see how can we come up on this crisis, because as we stand now, we need now to see how we're going to protect our borders. For that matter, and bring some other state organs of the state to help us stopping the import that is flooding in our country. Because we cannot compete when other people are receiving product that should have been using our own local demand market, and then is flooded with the import sugar. So we're trying to bring all state organs like customs, intelligence, making sure that our borders are being monitored. And then those products are processed outside the borders of the country. They don't have an access, because what is happening here, you go to any supermarket, you will find products that are not processed in South Africa. Why? There are tons of sugar that are coming from Swaziland, and we don't know what government gets from that. And then is impacting us as farmers, is impacting the mills. Certain mills that are not investing inside the region are also feeling the pinch. And then we need to mitigate all those things and see how can we stop. And then we're dealing with that on day to day. We've got committees that are dealing with that, and then we're trying to put more sugar in export. But we need our guys are working day and night, trying to find a space where they can sell our sugar abroad, because we cannot cope in our own country. We cannot sell our product. Our warehouse is full of sugar that's produced in South Africa, and then in our shores is sugar that are not produced in South Africa.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. That was Tim Sibisi, the director of the South African Cane Growers, speaking to us about the sugar tax, among other things.